Welcome parents and caregivers to J.F.K. I'm Frank Zamperlin, principal here at J.F.K.
I am John Conroy, the assistant principal here at J.F.K.
First, we'd like to welcome you here to J.F.K. as incoming kindergarten parents and caregivers. Secondly, we hope that all of your families are safe and healthy during this time of the pandemic. We're doing things a little differently this year, obviously. So what we'd like to do is to record this presentation that we would normally do during an evening in May or June for parents and caregivers to get an overview of the kindergarten program. So what we will be doing is recording this presentation, posting it on our school website for you to reference, and then afterwards we'll give you time to answer questions, and we'll talk about that process at the end. We'd like to let you know who we are as people. So again, I'm Frank Zamperlin, principal here at JFK. This is going into my 6th year as principal. I was the principal at CV Star, the intermediate school, for 7 years. Before that, I worked as an assistant principal in Chappaqua, Marlboro, and the Bronx, and I was also a teacher in the Bronx for many years. My wife is a kindergarten teacher, so we talk shop at home. And like you transitioning with your child to kindergarten, I have a daughter who will be transitioning into high school next year. So all that anxiety you're feeling, I'm feeling too as a parent. But I only have one child. Mr. Conroy?
Again, I'm John Conroy, the assistant principal. Been here since the turn of the century. I started my years here at the Wells Middle School as a school counselor. I am still a school counselor, and I was fortunate enough to become an administrator, and then became the assistant principal of the Wells Middle School. A few years after that, I transitioned down to working with the little ones. I worked at Garden Street and here at JFK. Been here since 2008, 2009 school year, and this is just the greatest place in the world to work. Back to you, Dr.
It is a great place. How many kids do you have, Mr. Conroy?
I'm up to 4. Let's hope we stay there. And all kidding aside, everybody, as Dr. Zamperlin just referenced, myself as well, those 4 span now 8 until 14. So my experience, both personally and professionally, is currently a 2nd grader, 4th grader, 7th grader, and an 8th grader. So we cover the gamut of high school through 2nd grade for you as parents. So again, whatever you need, please give us a call. Please send us an email.
So we look at things both as being principals of the school, but also as fathers, parents of children. We look at a counseling approach, especially at the early elementary level. Both Mr. Conroy and I live fairly locally. I'm a Putnam guy most of my life, living up here. I'm a Mayapack grad, living here in Putnam Valley. So we understand the area and the trends that have been happening over the years. Mr. Conroy's been from...
I grew up in Yonkers, southern Westchester. My wife is from the Bronx. So Frank covers the north and I cover the south.
So we understand all those transitions that everybody's going through. Again, we welcome you here to JFK. So kindergarten is going to be the class of 2033. Now, when we think of that, my daughter, when she was born, is the class of 2024. And I thought, boy, that time is so far away. And in reality, time flies when you're a parent. Time just picks up speed. So we want you to cherish every moment that you have with your children and participate, especially in these early years. They are vital. So when we have activities in the school, when we're doing houses with during the holidays and we're building our gingerbread homes and things like that, please find the time, be present in your child's life, because they will remember your active participation. It's what you do that they remember. And they will also remember what you don't do. So if you're not present, they will remember that also. We are in an ever-changing world, obviously, for what we're going through. But the class of 2033, 13 years ago, it was 2007. At that point, my daughter was only 1 year old. And when we think of texting, I go back to my old flip phone. When we think of Facebook, what is that? We think about the cell service and internet. what we had then to what we have now is a very different world. When we think of computers in virtual reality, we actually have two of those computers here at JFK, where things are in 3 dimension. That's what we will begin to expose your children to. We are a one-to-one environment, so every child, K through 2, and actually K through 12, has a computer designated to them. And during this pandemic, we were even able to give our K1 and 2 students a Chromebook to take home so that they can use them in the home setting, so we can do this digital learning. We will work on coding with your children, and then you have to start thinking about what is the world going to be like? How will my children, how will this school prepare my child for an ever-changing landscape? When we start to see personal robots happening, and they're happening, because you have them in your house. Some of you call them Alexa, some of you call them Echo, but they're in your homes. Now we're just adding arms and legs to these things that are actually working. So the world that we know will no longer exist as we move into the future. As a guy working through college, I would unload tractor trailers. That's what I did, working in a warehouse. That type of job now may be taken over by this kind of robot. And if you look at Amazon Warehouse, when you see those videos, that's exactly how the packages are being moved from one area to another with human assistance. So what will the world look like in this ever-changing landscape? So we look at children through an intellectual, social, emotional, and physical lens. When we look at children between 0 and 4, that is the greatest amount of brain growth development that takes place as humans evolve and grow. So when you think of that baby, I had 1, you had 4, and you're walking out of that hospital, that child cannot do anything by themselves. They need you to feed them, clean them, everything. By the time they're 4 years old, they're running around, they're thinking of concepts, colors, letters, all these things. They're acquiring language. So our job is to capture that development and then build over the next 3 years, between 5 and 6, 6 and 7, and 7, 8 years old, before they go on to transition to the intermediate school.
On the tail end of the social emotional development, again, as I mentioned before, as a school counselor, I think my entire life I've been concerned about people's social and emotional development. As you folks could all imagine, working from home, now living 24/7 from home, and trying to have that delicate balance, you know, we know, we'll be extra vigilant and concerned about the social emotional development of your children, specifically as a result of what we're all going through now with this social distancing. So social emotional development, I'll add a little more to this a little later in the presentation when we get to ruler. Again, it'll be super important. There'll be a connection between the two. You'll hear about it shortly. But that social emotional twist, not just when the children walk in the building as kindergartners, when we have this natural developmental shift, this swing of going from first grade to second grade and being the most mature, the oldest kids in the building, and getting all of those kids, that whole entire grade, ready for that all-important transition from second grade to now being big kids in the third grade is a super important aspect of what we work on here at JFK.
So we also look at that physical development that the children go through as they grow, and we see these little kindergartners and these bigger the second graders as they go through. With those transitions, we try to prepare our children for that transition to CV Star, because the next important large brain growth development happens between the ages of 10 to 14, of which I've just lived through in my house, and I think you have also. And those emotions can go up and down, so we will be focusing on that social emotional piece strongly during your child's years here at JFK. So at the elementary level, our philosophy is that this is a foundational level where we guide students to develop their basic skills, how to learn, how to adapt, and design their approach to understanding, because people learn in different modalities. So we are looking at children to figure out what is their best approach. Are they visual, auditory, tactile? And we try to tailor their education based upon their needs.
So we really do try to capitalize not just only on the unique characteristics and the needs of your kids, but to foster academic excellence in each and every one of them, regardless of the level they're at when they walk in the door, while also understanding their emotional, social, and of course the whole child, their physical development. It's all intertwined, and we focus on literally the whole child.
So what the district has done over the last few years, and you'll be hearing more about this as we go along, is developed a strategic coherence plan. And often we just refer to it as the SCP. And your children will be learning the language of the strategic coherence plan as a foundation for building upon these skills. So the world around us has changed, and this digital age is an ever-shrinking global economy, and haven't we learned that during this pandemic with supply chains and so on? So what does it mean to be appropriately prepared for lifelong learning in this new world as things are transforming? Content knowledge is no longer enough. When we were younger, you would get facts, regurgitate them onto a piece of paper, and that was considered knowledge. Now there's a growing consensus regarding that there are certain skills that children need for this new environment. And without these skills, students will have limited choices moving forward. So they will need to be able to adapt appropriately, adjust their learning circumstances, and look at what opportunities for change they have throughout their lives. Just as we're doing right now, people are learning to change and adapt to different needs, especially since we're staying home a lot. And so our district is looking to make certain K-12 that each student who graduates from here will leave with these skills and the content knowledge they need to succeed, regardless of their future choice. And we use a book, Most Likely to Succeed, Preparing Our Kids for an Innovation Era by Wagner and Dintersmith, as a reference, which is a good read for you to look at this summer if you're interested.
Okay, as you've heard Dr. Zamperla mention, a few key, we like to also refer to them as our pillars. We have 5 main categories, topics, themes, if you will, and they are the following: critical thinking, communication and collaboration, across the top, civic responsibility, bottom left, adaptability. I don't think this generation will have any issues dealing with adaptability. But with that being said, as you have all learned, so important in these last few months, nothing more important than being adaptable. And last but not least, go hand in hand with being adaptable, perseverance. Do not quit, do not give up, no matter what. Have that fighting spirit, and perseverance will usually help you get into that last category, which is success.
So as a foundational level, when we talk about these things and persevering, children will use that language in their classrooms. And when we talk about critical thinking, I can walk into a kindergarten classroom, go next to a child and say, so what are you learning to do? And they will answer, we're learning to analyze the number 5 and different ways we can use it. That word analysis is used by 5-year-olds. And then as a district, we build upon that skill as the foundation with deeper learning as the children move on. So what are those skills and things, and how do they work? Well, obviously we work on the essential skills of reading, writing, math, and problem solving. So we focus on reading, writing, and math, and thinking through problems and how to solve them.
As we go around clockwise, understanding both myself and my peers, being able to relate to others, not just ourselves. Super important in the early grades. As we continue, personal and social relationships, communicating. How do we communicate with each other? Not just in person, but distance-wise as well. Collaborating, not just again in person. What does that look like now in the 21st century? It's very different. We now collaborate distance. Appropriate. Oh, and back to you.
So I'll go over this one. So when we look at these skills that Mr. Conroy is talking about, personal and social relationships, we look at how we apply those skills. So as he's talking about understanding self, many times when a child goes out and hits a friend or something, or strikes out, it's not about being bad or hurting the other person. It's that I don't have the language yet to express my feelings. And our job is to teach the children how to apply those skills to communicate, how to apply analyzing and evaluating knowledge, making the learning purposeful. That's our goal. And then how to be ultimately creative and innovative as the children move on through our years in the district. So when we talk about levels of student understanding, we look at these steps for depth. Students can state clearly and demonstrate. When we look in designing lessons, do they know it? Do they know it and can explain it? Do they know it, can explain it, and can they then connect it to other ideas? And you will hear about the children talking about making connections to their learning. That word is key. And then once they know it, can explain it, can connect it to other ideas, can they design questions about their learning? Can they say, why? And then start thinking that out. When my daughter was little and our children were young and in your home, what's that word they always ask over and over and over again? Why? Love that word. You know, as a parent, sometimes you're thinking, oh my gosh, stop saying why. Embrace the why, because they are curious about their world. We don't want them to lose that. Because if they know it, can explain it, can connect it, can design questions, then ultimately, can they get in front of a group of peers and teach it? That's when the mastery happens, that they can actually teach their peers in the classroom, and they will get up as 5-year-olds and present to the class so that they can be on the spot, and that's when you know someone has mastered knowledge.
Okay, folks, so we will not read this list to you, but here is our fine list of kindergarten teachers for this academic school year. Okay, we have 10 teachers, we have inclusion classes, we call them ICT, integrated co-teaching classes, forgive me everybody. And then the rest are split up in general education. We are blessed to have the opportunity to have kindergarten classroom aides paired up with that kindergarten teacher for that all-important social, emotional, early childhood development. All right, please know that caveat, as I said, this school year, depending on the needs, the numbers, we sometimes have shifts. As a result of that, you could have a teacher on one grade level have to move to another grade level as a result of student needs. We try to keep everybody where they are. We just share if we have that situation unfold, there is that possibility that a teacher could have to shift from one grade level to another.
So a day in the life of a kindergartner, what does a day look like for your child? What our regular schedule is, we pretty much start at 9 o'clock. The buses arrive before then. And this whole schedule within our building actually revolves around the needs of kindergartners. Many coming from preschool settings and so on, their day is broken up with a nap, lunch, nap, snack. So the idea here is that at 9 o'clock we have a homeroom, and that's for every child in the building. And then lessons begin throughout the building at 9 o'clock. For kindergarten, we stop at 11, so it's a 2-hour stretch. Then they break for lunch and recess. Half the grades go to lunch, half go to recess, and then we swap. And lunch and recess is a half hour for lunch and a half hour for recess. So your children in the middle of their day will have an hour of eating and recess time, which play is extremely important for our children here, K, 1, and 2. Then we break up to a math block after that, around noon. And then they have an intervention period, and this is where services could be delivered for speech, language, OT, any kind of reading needs, and so on. And then they will have the end of the day with a block of English Language Arts, ELA, and a special, PE, library, music, art. And we have 120 minutes of English Language Arts a day, ELA, reading and writing, 60 minutes of math. We try to embed about 25 minutes of science, social studies, or word study, so they're learning language and how to break down words phonetically. We have an intervention period, it's 40, 60 minutes of lunch and recess. We embed 20 minutes of snack. If lunch is here, we'll embed a snack somewhere around after 1 o'clock within the classrooms. And then 40 minutes of specials, art, library, music. PE is twice a week, physical education. And then 40 minutes between homeroom. And for kindergarten, we embed an extra section of time to get all of our children ready for dismissal. You know what it's like to get one child buttoned up, zipped up, ready with a backpack in the morning. Think about having 20 to 24 of them in a classroom trying to get that done. So every homeroom, as Mr. Conroy says, has a full-time aide. So there's a teacher and an aide in the classroom. So we have about 22 kids in a class. Think about 11 children to 1 adult. And our building, by the way, is one big square. And normally we would take you for a tour, but we will work on something for later in August to figure out how that's going to work. But the homerooms are located in groups throughout the building. Kindergarten, as soon as you come in the main entrance, is on the left side and runs down the entire hallway. So all of kindergarten is in one section of the building next to the main office. First and second grade are clustered in other areas. One corner has the entire first grade, and then second grade, our oldest children, we have 6 classrooms clustered together. Then there's an art room in the middle and the 3 classrooms there. But they're all in another section of the building. Again, clustered near one another. And this helps us to have same grade level work. If students and teachers want to work together, homeroom to homeroom, they don't have to go far distance to work together. So each section of the building has a different grade level. It's called a house structure.
Curriculum, creating a school focused on the future. Okay, we incorporate, here's basically our curriculum, everybody, the programs we utilize. So first is ELA, again, English Language Arts. We utilize the Columbia University Teachers College Reading and Writing Project. It's a formal program. We've utilized it for several years now. That is a K-5, J.F.K, and CV Star approach. We have also begun over the last couple of years Math in Focus. We had a formal pilot. We piloted 2 programs. We have chosen Math in Focus and have been utilizing that for the last 2 years. Social Studies. Social Studies is aligned with the Putnam Northern Westchester BOCES. We utilize their curriculum, and it's a regional program. Science, we like to refer to this acronym as STEM. Science, technology, engineering, and math, okay? We take STEM and we make that STEAM because we now incorporate art into that whole concept. STEM or STEAM. DDI, data-driven instruction. We assess the kids 3 times a year. I'll mention that a little later. We analyze those formally. Grade level, building level, and an individual level. We cover all of those categories to deal with the children and get them the specific needs they need in order to grow. MTSS, multi-tiered support system. Any child that struggles for any reason, academic, social, emotional, personal needs, we utilize this system. The teacher or staff member would bring that child up to myself, Dr. Zamperlin, give us a background, explain to us with, again, some data, thoughts and feelings, make this as objective a process as possible, and then we set up formal meetings and come up with what you call SMART goals. Those are to help that child grow, again, whether that's an academic and or social emotional need. We get back together 6 to 8 weeks later, analyze the progress or lack thereof, and then we march on with new goals. Lastly, but probably the most important, especially as a result of what we're all going with this worldwide pandemic, you have our character education program. Yes, I think you all know we are the Brewster Bears, and as a result, J.F.K. are the Cubs. That acronym stands for C, care for others. The U is use respectful behavior. The B is be responsible. And the S stands for safety matters. That is incorporated into our code of conduct. We have another group of letters. PBIS is our positive behavior intervention system. As Dr. Zandler mentioned when we started, we really both take not only a fatherly, but a counseling approach to what we do. Long gone are the punitive days where you're not being good and you're not behaving. It is about making good choices. And that is where we go with this. It is all positive in nature, and we reward the children on a daily basis. The entire school hears about it in our morning announcements. Children get a Cubs pencil, and their names are mentioned, and everyone gets to come to the main office when they are called. Okay, social and emotional growth. We started with this in the beginning. Again, extremely important when your children come back to school, not only for you as parents, and it's just as good for you as it is for the children. We all need, no matter how old we are, to regulate our emotions. So, ruler stands for another group of letters. Recognize, probably the most important, right? Recognize where you're at and how you feel. You, understanding those emotions and understanding the causes and the consequences of how you feel and how that makes others feel. Labeling your emotions. You feel it, but you're not quite sure what it is you're feeling. It's important to come up with a label, and it can help you identify the way you're feeling any given moment. Finally, regulating those emotions. How important is that, folks? If we can regulate our emotions, we're able to keep our emotions in check, helps us treat others respectfully and responsibly, makes us all look like class acts, even if we don't feel like it in our heart in the moment, and it's what we teach the children. My last plug, and boy, for this, super important, when the children come back to school, we will utilize this formula, this system, this acronym, and we will have classrooms, basically lessons in the room, to help the children navigate their worlds once they return to the school. Character education, I'll just reference it quickly. I've already alluded to it prior. PBIS, positive behavior intervention supports, keep things as positive as possible for the children, making good choices. And you've already heard me mention Cubs and what they stand for. All of that is neatly tied into our code of conduct, which teaches the children how to behave, how to function, get along, and adapt, not just in society, but here at school. Assessments. I mentioned this as well. So 3 times a year, the entire building, of course on their own grade level, get analyzed. They take tests on the computer. They take them in 3 disciplines, well, 2 disciplines, reading and math. We have early literacy for the youngest kids. We have reading once you get a little more advanced and start understanding language in the context and have some vocabulary words under your belt. And then we also utilize math. So we cover both reading and math 3 times a year, the beginning, the middle, and the end, the fall, the winter, and the spring. Again, we analyze that based on individual, class, grade level, and school level, and that helps us drive not just instruction, but whether we need to change our behavioral codes of conduct. Do we see patterns and trends over here? Do we see patterns and trends over there? We get back together with each grade level as a group, and we come up with solutions. One more comment, please. This is super important for all of you folks, making a connection for you. We utilize the DIAL, okay? DIAL is a diagnostic inventory for understanding how the kids learn, okay? We utilize the DIAL to do our kindergarten screening in order to place the kids. So there'll be more to follow on that. We'll let you know exactly what that process is going to look like. We would normally do that in person during the month of June and then create class lists. So there will be more to follow on exactly what that process is going to look like for you and for your children coming in the near future.
And normally, like Mr. Conroy says, around the week of May 20th, going into early June is when we start to plan that, get calendars out to you, because you may have heard from other parents in previous years that they went through this screening process. So we will get more information out about that, as we move into the summer and tell you what that looks like. And again, there's ongoing assessment in the classrooms, and then the multi-tiered support system. That includes you as the parent. You're very involved in the process.
You are welcome, and you are invited to those meetings. For now, it just might be virtually.
So what can you do? What can parents and caregivers do? There are certain things that you can do to prepare your child for school. And you can do this now going into the summer. Read books and poetry to your children on a regular basis. Really important to set a story time routine right before sleep so that the children are getting that language and then they process it while they're sleeping overnight. That language acquisition is very important. Make sure your child gets sufficient amount of sleep. Now I know that work schedules happen, and some children we've learned sometimes don't get to bed till 9 or 10 o'clock. It's way too late. They really need to have a set time, and they need at least 8 hours or more of sleep at this level. I have learned what sleep means on the adolescent level. With a 14-year-old, that's a very different thing, and you have a long time to prepare for that one. So establish good listening habits. If you ask your child a question and they answer, you may want to ask it again in a different way so that they are processing language, so that they are understanding what you are meaning. Sometimes there's a big disconnect sometimes between how people communicate. So listening is key. Teach your children his full name, address, phone numbers, alphabet, and the numbers to 20 plus at least. And the full name is important because when children go by nicknames, and a bus driver, for example, needs to call upon them, they may need to know that it's Catherine and not Katie. So they're focused on Katie because that's what they've heard all their life, and the bus driver may be looking for Catherine, especially in September and October. So make sure that the children know both their name, full name, and if there's a nickname and how they're tied together. Give your child simple responsibilities. My daughter's in charge of all the recycling. She has been in our house for many years. Make sure that they have certain responsibilities. Setting the table for dinner, putting up the forks and the napkins. Something that they have as a responsibility because they'll need it in the classroom. And teach your children to dress independently. We know how challenging that is as parents. But they need to be able to button their clothes, zip up their jackets, because it can be very time consuming. We actually built a board in our house with old sneakers, screwed them to there, and my daughter practiced her shoe tying. There are ways to go about it, but make sure, if you can, teach them how to dress independently. Make sure your child knows how to take care of their toileting needs. All kindergarten classrooms have a sink and toilet room in the classroom, as well as a sink and water fountain in the classroom. So there's no need for your child to really leave the room in order to take care of toileting needs. They will if they go to the cafeteria and the gym and so on, but when they're housed in their classrooms, they have a toilet and a sink in a small room in there. So they really need to learn how to do that independently. Make sure your child is in good health and is well fed before sending them to school. We do have a breakfast and lunch program here. So when the children get dropped off with the buses in the morning, many of them will go right to the cafeteria and get their breakfast. We have a system where you have an account, you put money on the account, the children go to the cash register, they remember their number, believe it or not, and it gets punched in by the cashier, and they can get breakfast and lunch. And please inform your child's teacher of anything that may affect their emotional well-being for your child. If your dog dies, if something happens, please let the teacher know. Because if they're going to be teaching a story during that day about a dog, they may want to know that information up front so that they can choose a different story that day, and maybe take care of your child's social emotional needs as well. We have a school social worker, psychologist, and a school counselor on hand full-time at JFK to handle those needs, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Also, engage your child to invite friends to your home and play dates. You know, the social interaction opportunities that the children have gotten away from since this pandemic, we need, as Mr. Conroy said, to develop more social connections, especially when the children come back to school in September, October, and November, so that they are interacting with one another. And we don't want that gap of this time to linger. We want to really strengthen their social interaction opportunities. And as we ease through this pandemic, which is temporary, things will get better. We're already starting to see some of that. We want you to start looking at building those social interactions with children. Right now, even if it's a Zoom or whatever meeting that they can interact with their friends, we've learned through this pandemic that that is very vital for children-to-children interaction, child to child. So think about that. And then please label the outerwear. Put your names, the child's name on all the clothing. We got these collections of our lost and found jackets, mittens, hats. If the name's on there, we can get them right back to the child, or even call you to pick them up. So if you have any questions, the first person of contact at JFK is your child's teacher. And then there's the main office for general questions, Mrs. Danvin, Mrs. Agugliaro. And then we have a support team. That support team is Mrs. Bellucci, who's our school counselor. Mrs. Cunningham is our school psychologist. Ms. Muller is our social worker. And we do have a full-time sheriff here at JFK. Each school has a full-time sheriff, and our deputy right now is Brian Supa, who also has young children and looks at things through a dad's lens. And then there's Mr. Conroy, obviously, and myself. In normal communication, if you have a question or an email or a voicemail you send us, we try to get back to you within 24 hours. You know, so if you ask a question, we'll try to turn that over by the next day. If, though, that information is urgent or an emergency, then label your message as such, so that we know. I can say, Mr. Conroy, I can't get to this, but this is an urgent one. Can you call this parent today? Or vice versa. So if you say it's urgent, this is a family emergency, and you get hold of us, then we'll know to react right away and not wait another day to get back to you. So again, urgent and emergency. So what we're going to do is take this presentation and put it on our website, both the video and the slides. And then we will send out a Google form. Mr. Conroy will be doing that soon. And between now and June, you'll have the opportunity to write questions on this Google form and submit them. Then Mr. Conroy and I will look them over, and we will collate them into groups, and then we will put another video together answering those questions for you. And again, we'll place those on the website also. So the dial 4, as we said, is to be determined. We're looking at the current circumstances. We are working on what late August would look like as far as transition right now. Traditionally, we've had transportation come over and bring a bus, right?
Give the kids the opportunity to physically go on the bus and go on a couple of roads here in the neighborhood.
Yeah, so we'll do that usually in the front parking lot. We're working with transportation now to make that happen. Our September plans are being developed K-12 because all of our buildings work together, and we're looking at what September may mean. Now, of course, we're waiting for any direction from the New York State Education Department and Governor Cuomo. And just a reminder that the school budget is currently scheduled for June, and the district will be sending you out information on that. Again, that's pending, any update from New York State Education Department and Governor Cuomo. And I think that's it. It says thank you for attending tonight, but we thank you for watching our transition video. We welcome you again to JFK.
Welcome, everybody.